Kitchen dark, only the blue glare of a screen. One line on the 529 portal read dar transfer pdng and my fingers went numb. Behind a closed door, Noah's cry kept thinning, like air leaking out of a balloon. My name is Eleanor Nora Hale Whitaker. I am 66, and at 1:13 a.m. Monday, March 3, 2025, Ava called me sobbing because Noah had a 103-degree FF fever and Candace had been gone 3 days. The password was in that house. If you're listening somewhere quiet tonight, I'd love to know where. There's something about family silence that sounds the same in every zip code. If this kind of story hits close, you can tap like, not for me. But for the part of you that's ever been told you were too much. And if you want to stay with this all the way through, subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the truth finally stops whispering. I retired in 2021, but my body never learned how to retire. I woke before dawn, not to an alarm, but to the instinct that said the day was running without me. My hair was cut close, silver at the temples, and my closet looked like a row of shadows, dark slacks, dark coats, shoes that didn't squeak. In my kitchen, the light felt clinical, like evidence room fluorescence. I kept a notebook by the coffee maker and wrote minutes the way other people wrote prayers. For 28 years I worked financial crimes for the FBI. People think money cases are quiet. They are not. They're just quieter than blood. A fraud can ruin a life without leaving a bruise, and the victims still apologize when they ask for help. I learned early that charm is a tool, not a personality. I learned that the sweetest voice in a room often belongs to the person moving the cash. That's why it still burns, even now, that I let my own family become a case I wasn't allowed to open. The last conversation I had with my son Ethan came like a door closing. I was standing at my sink, hands in water, when my phone buzzed. His name lit the screen and my shoulders loosened before my brain could stop them. I answered and heard him breathe like he'd been rehearsing. "Mom," he said, "Ava needs stability. Candace says you're a trigger." Trigger. The word landed like something cold against my ribs. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just spoke in that exhausted offshore voice, the one that always sounded like wind and metal. Then he said they needed space, and the call ended with a softness that felt worse than a slam. After that, my messages stopped delivering. I kept thinking, if I'd said the perfect sentence, he would have remembered I was his mother. The truth is, Candace had already taught him how to hear me as noise. Before Noah, before the online schooling, Ava had been a kid who took up space. I saw it in the one picture I still had saved, the kind you keep when you're afraid the rest might disappear. Ava holding a trophy, chin lifted, cheeks flushed from stage lights, the room behind her blurred with other teenagers and folding chairs. It wasn't just the trophy, it was the way her hand gripped it like she'd earned a place in the world and planned to keep it. That image stayed in my phone long after my texts started bouncing back. When Noah was born, the story in the family turned into something smoother, more polished. Candace posted about motherhood like it was a brand she designed. In the local parent group, she wrote about routines and gratitude and how hard it was to hold everyone together. Those words looked harmless until you read them the way I read bank statements, watching for what wasn't there. Ava's name started showing up like a warning label. Ava needed structure. Ava needed support. Ava needed to be home. Then Ethan told me Ava was doing online schooling now, because it was better for her. His tone said the decision had already been made, and my opinion had already been filed away. The first time I drove past 7714 Larkspur Ridge Lane after being cut off, I didn't stop. I just slowed at the corner, hands tight on the wheel, staring at a house that looked like a brochure. Fresh paint, clean driveway. A kind of quiet that felt rehearsed. I imagined Ava behind one of those windows, and I hated that I had to imagine. At night, when the air in my own home went still, I tried to picture the inside of theirs. I pictured Candace's voice floating through bright rooms. I pictured Ethan tired, trusting the person who sounded most certain. I pictured Ava learning the rule that kids learn fastest: if the adults don't want to hear it, you swallow it. Sometimes I opened my notebook and wrote nothing but names. Ethan, Candace, Noah. I circled them the way I used to circle accounts in a flowchart, looking for the hidden line. I told myself it wasn't my case. I told myself I was respecting boundaries. The ink bled a little on the page anyway. The night Ava called, my phone rang like a siren in a quiet street. 1:13 a.m. Monday, March 3, 2025. Her voice came through in pieces, wet and shaking. Grandma. I can't. Noah's burning up. She said 133F like she'd read it twice to make sure it was real. She said Candace had gone to a retreat 3 days ago and wasn't answering. She said she was scared to take him to the hospital because they'd ask who she was. The word she didn't say hung between us, blame. I sat up so fast my sheets twisted around my legs. The room smelled like stale sleep and cold air. I kept my voice low, the way you talk when a frightened person is holding a glass and you don't want it to shatter. I told her what to do in the next 5 minutes, then the next 5, and I heard her trying to breathe like I was handing her oxygen. When the call ended, I didn't let myself sit there. I reached for my notebook and wrote the time, the fever, the retreat, the silence. I wrote it the way I wrote every beginning, clean, specific, unarguable. Then I opened my contacts and found Calvin Reed. He used to take my late night calls when numbers didn't add up, and I'd never needed him more than I did at that moment. I didn't dial yet. I just stared at his name like a promise. I also pulled up the only other names that mattered: Dr. Lena Park, the pediatric ER doctor Ava had mentioned in a frightened whisper after she said the word hospital, and Marisol Vega, the family attorney whose card I'd kept tucked inside my notebook for years. In my line of work, you learned that truth without an authority behind it could still be dismissed as emotion. I wasn't going to let Ava's pain get filed under dramatic. Outside my window, the streetlight made the world look washed out, like an old photograph. Inside, my coffee maker clicked as it warmed. My hands didn't shake. That was the dangerous part. When I stopped shaking, it meant I'd chosen a direction. I grabbed my dark coat, my keys, and the notebook. As I walked to the door, one thought kept repeating with the steady pressure of a fingerprint on glass: Candace hadn't just left a sick toddler behind. She had left Ava holding the consequences. And somewhere in that Florida house, behind the shine and the silence, there was paperwork that explained exactly why. I reached 77410 Larkspur Ridge Lane at dawn, the sky that pale Florida gray that makes everything feel suspended. From the curb, the house was magazine, perfect, no toys, no noise, a driveway so clean it felt rehearsed. Ava opened the door before I knocked. Her sweatshirt hung loose, and her eyes were too awake for 17. She didn't say hello. She whispered, "She can't know you're here," and stepped back like the hallway itself might report her. Noah's cry drifted from inside, thin and uneven. Ava moved toward it on reflex, not asking permission, just going. In her room, a baby monitor sat on the nightstand, volume high. Down the hall, the master suite door was shut in that final way that meant control. One room was built to listen. One was built to sleep. Noah was so hot my palm stung when I touched his cheek. He clung to Ava's shirt like it was the only stable thing in the house. Ava pressed her forehead to his and shut her eyes for a heartbeat. "We're going to the hospital," I said. Ava's throat bobbed. "They'll ask who I am, dumb." "They can ask me," I said. "You're not taking this alone." The children's hospital was bright lights and hard chairs. Dr. Lena Park listened to Noah's chest, checked his ears, and her mouth tightened. "How long has he been this sick?" she asked. Ava swallowed. "He's been pulling at his ear," I told Candace. Dr. Park looked up. "Where are his parents?" "My dad's offshore," Ava said. Candace left. "And you are?" "Ava, 17. Dr. Park's pen paused and pressed harder. She asked who gives meds, who wakes up at night, who decides when he sees a doctor. Ava answered without thinking, and each answer sounded less like a sister and more like a parent. When Dr. Park pulled me aside, her voice dropped. "This infection didn't start tonight," she said. "And your granddaughter is carrying herself like a primary caregiver. I'm documenting what I'm seeing. I'm flagging it." Ava heard flag and went still. Her eyes flicked to me like she expected blame. I only squeezed her hand. "You did the right thing," I said. Back at the house, Noah finally slept. Ava immediately started cleaning, wiping counters with frantic little strokes, as if a clean kitchen could keep trouble away. I stopped her. "Show me where she keeps the papers." Ava's gaze slid to a storage closet off the kitchen. Inside, behind stacked bins, sat a locked file cabinet that did not belong in a family home. The key was nowhere obvious, which meant it was somewhere deliberate. Ava hesitated, then opened a small wall safe I hadn't noticed. Inside were login cards, a folded letter from an insurance company, and a sticky note with a string of numbers and letters. Her cheeks flushed like she'd been caught doing something wrong. "Candace said I wasn't allowed," she whispered. I took photos. The sticky note, the letterhead, not to be dramatic, to be exact. In the cabinet, I found the words that turned my fear into Precision Education Trust, 529, life insurance payout. Ava's mother's name was printed above Ava's like a promise. Then the line that made my jaw lock, authorized user Candace Whitaker. I logged into the portal at the kitchen table. Transaction log, withdrawals, transfers, payments labeled consulting, coaching, retreat, and a wire transfer pending right before Candace disappeared. My phone camera clicked for the pending transfer, the account rolls. Ava flinched at each click as if proof could explode. Her phone buzzed. A notification from the local parent group. Candace had posted a story with an old, staged photo of Noah and bright text claiming Ava was spiraling, that Candace was the only one holding the family together. Comments piled on. Dramatic, jailous, lazy, poor Candace. Ava didn't cry. She folded inward like someone turning off a light. "See," she whispered. "No one ever believes me." I screenshot the post and wrote the exact time in my notebook. Candace lived on narrative, so I preserved hers. I called Calvin Reed and read him the portal labels. His voice sharpened. "Send me everything. I'll map the flow and build a clean timeline." "I need her to lock herself into it," I said. Calvin understood. We drafted a short, formal message through the portal requesting clarification on the pending transfer and updated paperwork for Ava's records. Harmless on its face. A tripwire underneath. I hit send and watched the outbox. That night I contacted Offshore Operations Liaison and gave the facts 1 and 3 GSF favor. Candace gone 3 days, Dr. Park documenting and flagging, a minor acting as caregiver, and the trust moving. I asked for Ethan on an emergency call with a witness present. Ethan's face appeared on screen, wind-burned, eyes rimmed red. He started with disbelief. "Mom, why are you in my house?" I held up the page and pointed to authorized user. "Because Candace has access to Ava's trust." He exhaled like he wanted it simple. "I'm offshore. Candace handles paperwork. It's easier." Ava stepped into frame, arms crossed tight. "I told you I was drowning." Ethan's eyes flicked to her, then away, and then he said it, quiet, tired, honest. "I forwarded your messages to Candace," he admitted. "I needed the house to stay quiet." I thought she could calm things down. The silence after that had weight. Ava's shoulders dropped, not in relief, but in recognition. She stared at the screen and whispered, "So you gave her my words." Ethan's mouth opened. Ava lifted one hand. "Don't," she said. I wrote the time of his confession exactly without looking down. My hand knew the pen. Ava's face didn't ask for comfort. It asked for proof. I kept my voice steady and my camera ready. In that moment, the wound wasn't Candace. It was the certainty that the person Ava begged had handed her pain back to the woman causing it. Candace walked back into 7714 Larkspur Ridge Lane on the afternoon of March 10th like nothing had shifted. Sunglasses in her hair, phone in hand, smile ready. Ethan was on the large screen in the living room, connected through Offshore Operations Liaison, his image slightly pixelated but unmistakably present. Ava stood near the staircase. I sat at the dining table with a folder placed square in front of me. Candace stopped when she saw me. "Oh," she said lightly. "Family meeting?" Her tone tried to shrink the room. Ethan spoke first. "Sit down." 2 words, no warmth. Candace blinked, recalibrating. "What's going on?" I slid the first page across the table. Education Trust, 529 account, Ava's name, her late mother's name above it. Then the line authorized user Candace Whitaker. Candace didn't touch the paper. She glanced at Ethan's image on the screen instead. "You told her about that?" "I signed it," Ethan said. "I want to know why." Candace laughed once. "Short. Because you're offshore half the year. Someone has to handle paperwork." I turned the page. Transaction log, consulting, coaching, retreat. Another page, life insurance payout disbursement summary. Then the one that made the air thin. Wire transfer pending. Dated 3 days before she left for her retreat. I tapped the line with my finger. "This transfer," I said. "Explain it." Candace's jaw tightened. "That's none of your business." "It's Ava's." Ethan cut in. Candace shifted to her usual strategy. She softened her voice. Ava has been unstable. I've been covering so much. You don't understand how hard it is. I didn't look at her. I looked at Ava. Ava didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just stared at the papers like they were oxygen. Lena Park's documentation sat beneath the transaction log. Not dramatic. Clinical, infection untreated beyond acceptable window. Minor acting as primary caregiver. Recommendation for further review. I placed it next to the trust statements. While you were at your retreat, I said, Noah had a 103-degree fever. Dr. Park flagged neglect. Ava was the one up at night. Candace snapped, the mask slipping. She exaggerates everything. Ethan's voice cut through the speaker. I saw the hospital report. Silence. I lifted my phone and displayed the screenshots from the parent group. Candace's post. The comments dramatic. Jealous, lazy. You built a narrative, I said quietly, while moving money from a minor's education fund. Candace's eyes darted, calculating. That money was for family expenses, she said. For the household. For consulting? I asked. For coaching. For a retreat you left a sick toddler to attend. Her shoulders squared. You're twisting this? No, I replied. The portal logs aren't emotional. I slid the final sheet forward. The portal message she had responded to the night before, after Calvin and I triggered it. Her own words confirming she had full discretion over the account, as agreed. Referencing the signed authorization Ethan had executed. Ethan stared at the screen longer than he needed to. I didn't know it looked like this, he said. Ava inhaled sharply. I told you. Candace turned toward Ava. You've been poisoning him against me. Ava flinched at the word poisoning. I stood, not loudly, not dramatically. I just stood, and the room adjusted. Candace Vaughn, I said, using her maiden name deliberately. This ends now. Her head snapped toward me. Ethan's voice followed. I'm revoking your access. Candace's laugh broke in half. You can't just? Yes, he said. I can. I picked up the folder and closed it slowly, every page aligned. Marisol Vega is preparing an emergency petition. Protective order. Custody review. The plan administrator has been contacted. The account is under review. Candace's breathing changed. Quick, shallow. You don't have proof of intent, she said. I met her eyes. The wire transfer pending is time-stamped. The hospital documentation is time-stamped. Your portal message is time-stamped. Your post is time-stamped. The word time-stamped hung like a verdict. Ethan leaned closer to his camera. Did you move that money? Candace didn't answer immediately. That hesitation was louder than anything she'd said all afternoon. Iva stepped forward. Just tell the truth, she said. Candace's mouth opened closed. For once, there was no performance ready. The house felt different then. Not louder, not calmer, just rearranged. Candace looked at me with something colder than anger. Not fear, calculation. But calculation needs leverage. And for the first time since I'd walked into that house, she didn't have any. The next morning, the house felt stripped of performance. Candace stayed in the guest room, door closed, phone quiet for once. Ethan remained on the screen longer than his shift allowed, not speaking much, just watching Ava move through the kitchen like someone relearning gravity. Marisol Vega called before noon. Her voice was calm, precise. Emergency petition drafted. Protective order in motion. Custody review initiated. She would file the moment Ethan's authorization came through formally. The plan administrator had confirmed receipt of our inquiry and flagged the account for internal review. Access under examination. No additional transfers permitted until resolution. Candace didn't know that yet. I sat at the dining table with the folder open again, not adding anything, just aligning what was already there. Transaction log. Authorization form Ethan signed offshore. Dr. Lena Park's documentation. Screenshots of the post that painted Ava as unstable. The portal message where Candace confirmed she had discretion over the funds. Every piece already existed. I hadn't created anything. I had only preserved it. Iva stood beside me, reading the trust statements more slowly than before. So it's frozen, she asked. For now, I said. She nodded once, not relieved, just steadier. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Candace was awake. Power shifts rarely come with shouting. Sometimes they come with access revoked. With a login that suddenly fails. With a notification that says review pending. I closed the folder and slid it toward the center of the table, not hiding it. Candace would try again. People like her always do. But this time, the story wouldn't belong to her. It would belong to documentation, to timestamps, to signatures she didn't realize had already undone her. And for the first time since 1:13 a.m. on March 3rd, Ava wasn't standing alone in the frame. The house is quieter now, but not empty. There's a difference. Ava still walks carefully, like the floor might shift, but she looks people in the eye again. Ethan calls more often, not to explain, just to listen. If you've stayed with this story, I'd really like to hear where you're listening from, and what you would have said to Ethan in that living room. Would you have forgiven him right away, or would you have needed silence first? If you want to follow what happens when a family has to rebuild trust instead of pretend it, you can subscribe and stay with us a little longer, because there's still one unopened portal notification sitting in Candace's inbox. And I haven't decided yet whether to let her read it first